The news hit the Galactic Council chambers like an asteroid. A virulent contagion of unknown origin was tearing through the star lanes, leaving devastation in its wake. Panic crackled through the countless species represented, their voices a dissonant chorus of fear and blame. The Avelians, with their fragile exoskeletons, were decimated. The technologically superior Trillians found their advanced medtech hopelessly inadequate. Panic rippled outwards from the epicenter, threatening to paralyze interstellar trade and plunge the galaxy into a self-inflicted quarantine. Amidst this chaos, a single transmission from an unremarkable backwater planet pierced the gloom. The humans, relative newcomers to the galactic stage, offered a message as baffling as it was hopeful. They were unaffected. Initial reactions were a mix of disbelief and desperation. A remote human research outpost at the edge of infected space confirmed the claim. Human physiology was utterly resistant to the plague. They were walking among the infected with bewildering, robust health. Council fleets raced towards this anomaly named Earth. Yet, their arrival was not one of grateful supplicants, but of an armed expedition. Millennia of interspecies coexistence had frayed in this crisis. Questions burned amidst the fear. Were they the source of this plague, a biological weapon gone awry? Or were they hiding some secret for a cure, seeking to leverage the galaxy's desperation? Dr. Anya Vasiliev, head of the makeshift research station, met the heavily armed delegation with a mix of apprehension and unwavering determination. "We have no cure," she stated plainly. "Our initial scans suggest it's our messiness that confuses the pathogen." Eye stalks twitched in confusion. Messiness? Humans were considered untidy, true. Their medicine was surprisingly archaic, their evolutionary path riddled with seemingly self-destructive inefficiencies. "You get sick easily," Vasiliev continued. "Colds, infections, allergies. Your bodies are battlegrounds. Our best guess is this plague can't figure us out. Too much evolutionary chaos." She gestured wearily. "Come, let me show you." Under heavy guard, the aliens were led into the heart of the medical facility. Microscopes revealed a bewildering sight. Human cells, under attack by the plague, reacted in seemingly random ways. Some self-destructed, others mutated wildly, creating short-lived but effective defenses. It was biological anarchy compared to the targeted devastation the plague wreaked on other species. Admiral Zira of the Trillian Fleet, her exoskeleton a rigid armor against the trembling in her limbs, stared at the wildly fluctuating data readouts. It was impossible, inconceivable. "You fight with disorder," she finally managed, her voice a horrified whisper. Trillian science, like their entire culture, was built on precision, on the quantifiable elegance of biological mechanics. This raw, unpredictable resistance humans displayed was a horrifying affront to the natural order of the universe. Dr. Vasiliev, sensing the revulsion, spoke again, her voice taking on a lecturing tone familiar to many a weary medical student. "We're not immune in the traditional sense," she clarified. "This plague is still attacking us. It's just that our bodies, well, we're survivors. Millennia of fighting off random viruses, parasites, our own faulty genetic code. It's made our defenses unpredictable." She gave a wry smile. "Cancer, autoimmune diseases. We're used to our own cells misbehaving." A chorus of horrified gasps rippled through the delegation. To species who prided themselves on genetic purity, on meticulously planned evolutionary paths, the very idea of humans thriving with internal dysfunction was a chilling concept. They watched as the plague pathogen sputtered and died off within a human cell culture, not due to targeted antibodies, but from a sudden, inexplicable shift in the cell's own chemical makeup. Suddenly, the lead Xiltrian scientist, a being who had witnessed the decimation of his own peaceful race, clicked his chitinous mandibles in dawning comprehension. "Biological improvisation," he he rasped. It wasn't a compliment. News of humanity's immunity rocketed across the terrified galaxy. In a cruel twist of fate, this strange resistance turned humans from pariahs into the galaxy's only hope. Aid requests flooded Earth. Yet there was no single cure, no miracle vaccine to distribute. The answer was far less palatable. "We can offer exposure," Dr. Vasiliev explained apologetically to the desperate council. "Controlled infection protocols, building resistance the only way we know how, getting sick in survivable doses." The idea was met with revulsion. Xiltrians hissed, Avelians recoiled. Endure the plague they sought to escape? Submit to the very chaos that threatened to decimate them? Yet the news from the front lines was bleak. The plague was relentless. Extinction loomed as a very real possibility. The first volunteer was a Trillian, a scientist driven more by cold calculation than bravery. Under watchful guard, he was infected with a meticulously calibrated dose of the pathogen. The days that followed were a terrifying ordeal, feverish hallucinations, erratic organ malfunction. Then, as abruptly as it began, the crisis broke. His cells, initially overwhelmed, had mounted a chaotic, unpredictable defense that stabilized. He survived. Word spread like wildfire. A grudging hope surged amidst the despair. The galaxy, faced with a terrifying choice, decided to embrace a little human messiness in the desperate hope of survival. Earth became, not a cradle of salvation, but a brutal boot camp. Quarantine stations sprouted across the human solar system. Desperate envoys, their species teetering on the brink, arrived with troops of volunteers, or more often, those their societies could afford to lose. It was a harrowing path to an equally harrowing cure. The humans, ever pragmatic, could only offer the process, not a guarantee of survival. Some reacted with miraculous resilience, their bodies finding a way even amidst the onslaught. Others withered, their systems overwhelmed by the very adaptation that saved their species. The galaxy watched with a horrified fascination. The Trillians, their rigid structures shaken, saw in humanity an echo of the existential randomness they had spent millennia trying to control. The proud Xiltrians witnessed human soldiers enduring agonizing transformations without complaint, a grim reminder of the brutal resilience often required for survival. Fragile races, for whom sickness was once a societal blight, found a newfound, grudging respect for a species that lived in a constant state of biological warfare with themselves. Human scientists worked tirelessly, not just to manage the infections, but to understand the bizarre mechanisms at play. This led to a strange, unintended consequence. Species resistant enough to endure the exposure protocol began demanding modifications. Avelian scientists requested tweaks to introduce a touch of controlled internal chaos into their genome, a desperate bid to outwit future pathogens. The Xiltrians hesitantly experimented with induced cellular malfunctions as a defense mechanism against bioweapons. Meanwhile, the plague itself, its initial sweep across the stars halted, began to exhibit disturbing changes. It was adapting, learning. Faced with a galaxy that had embraced a little messy resistance, the contagion itself seemed to be mirroring the chaotic path to survival. A grim question haunted the minds of the Council, even as their species slowly clawed back from the brink. Had they merely traded one plague for another, less deadly but far more insidious? The universe, it seemed, abhorred order as much as it did chaos. True stability was impossible, and it was the humans, messy and maddening, who had taught the galaxy this chilling truth. In the sterile halls of the Trillian Redevelopment Institute, once a beacon of genetic precision, a disturbing shift was underway. Dr. Zalara, a brilliant and ambitious bioengineer, stared at the readout with a mixture of dread and fascination. "The pathogen, it's changed," he announced to the hushed assembly. "It's no longer merely reacting to our induced resistances, but actively seeking them out. It thrives on our unpredictability." The implications were staggering. What was once a desperate fight for survival now threatened to become a dangerous evolutionary arms race. Each species that underwent the harsh exposure protocol was unwittingly making the plague stronger, more adaptable, pushing it to become a chameleon in a galaxy of shifting targets. Panic threatened to erupt, but a cold voice cut through the fear. Admiral Zira, her exoskeleton gleaming dully in the harsh lights, had been at the forefront of the Trillian decision to embrace this uncertain salvation. "We knew the risks," she declared, "but extinction was the alternative. Continue the protocols, accelerate them. This is no longer just a cure, it's a battlefield, and we will adapt alongside this plague, or die trying." A strange blend of fear and grim determination hardened the expressions of her peers. The Trillians were not built for this kind of constant evolutionary warfare, yet they had chosen this path, knowing the costs, and like so many before them, they had learned a dangerous lesson from humanity. Sometimes survival was not a planned journey towards order, but a desperate dance amidst utter chaos. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were underway. The Avelians, driven to the precipice of collapse, embraced their fragility as a weapon. They became masters of manipulating their own hypersensitivity, developing bizarre internal defenses triggered by the slightest trace of the now omnipresent pathogen. The Ziltrians, their once rigid hierarchy shaken, grudgingly allowed for induced flaws, redundancies, controlled mutations, a touch of the illogical human resilience woven into their carefully engineered forms. Even humanity found itself facing a chilling mirror. The pathogen, once stymied by their glorious messiness, was evolving to pinpoint and exploit its weaknesses with terrifying efficiency. Human medical science became a desperate reactive force against their own unleashed plague. Aboard a human research vessel orbiting a forgotten dwarf star, Dr. Vasiliev sighed wearily as she reviewed the latest data. "We've become what we feared," she said softly to her team. "We weaponized our biology, and it backfired." The galaxy, once yearning for a return to normalcy, was now locked into an uneasy evolutionary war. The plague was an ever-present ghost, fueling relentless adaptation. Stasis had become the ultimate vulnerability. Humanity, the catalyst for this terrifying new era, bore the brunt of its own accidental creation. Yet, even amidst the constant struggle, a strange truth emerged. The galaxy that had so recently teetered on the brink was stronger, more adaptable. It was a brutal strength forged in the fires of the human messiness, a constant struggle akin to the internal battles humans waged against their own biology every single day. The universe had thrown a terrifying challenge at the ordered society of the stars, and in a darkly ironic twist, it was perhaps the most imperfect species, the humans, who had inadvertently shown them the only path forward, to fight chaos with chaos and to never surrender the ability to adapt.